And so just because she was like, that is so bad for you, blah, blah, blah. I was like, yeah, but like, it's fine. I Googled how much bacon should you have?
Oh, yeah.
And like the first answer was like, ideally, no one should ever eat
Nothing.
bacon.
Yeah.
Don't ever eat that.
Yeah.
Don't do that. Don't snort aspirin. What are you doing? You madman. Stop it. Get a hold
Mhm.
of yourself. Hey everyone, welcome to Two Takes on Film, the least overrated podcast. My name is Wyatt Croy, and as always, I'm joined by my co-host, Heather Davenport.
Hello.
Heather and I are two best of friends who love talking about all things movies, so if that sounds interesting to you, make sure to like and follow wherever you listen to podcasts so you never miss an episode. With that being said, we've got a great episode for you, a very special episode, one that I've been looking forward to since we did the same one last year. It is 2022's version of our unders and overs. So when it comes to the end of every year, Heather and I have decided that rather do your typical top 10 of the year, bottom 10 of the year, whatever list it may be that so many people do. While that's fun, there seems to be an oversaturation of the market with those types of videos. What we'd like to do is offer a little bit different of a perspective at the end of the year and talk about some films that probably are neither in our bottom or our top few of the year, but we feel for whatever reason they are either overrated or underrated. So we each have chosen 5 films. Neither of us know what 5 films the other have chosen. They might be the same 5, they might overlap, they might be 10 different films. We have been tasked with choosing at least 2 that we feel are overrated and 2 that we feel are underrated. And then the one in the middle, we get to basically choose whether or not we think it should be 3 overrated and 2 underrated or vice versa. Just as a bit of clarification, although I don't think this needs to be said, these lists are completely subjective. Our opinions on what might be underrated or overrated are our own, as well as even just our definition of what is underrated or overrated. You could have a really, really small movie that obviously we feel is underrated and needs to be seen more. You could even have a movie that a lot of people did see, but you just think needs to be talked about even more than it has. Just because a lot of people saw it doesn't mean we don't think that it's underrated. So as we go through, we'll kind of explain our thought process on each pick, as well as, some of the reasons why we chose it for that category. So to start us off, let's just jump right into it. Heather, what is your first overrated film of 2022?
Yeah, so this year actually felt kind of difficult to we were chatting about this before we started recording, and it is always easier for me to come up with a bigger list of my underrated films from the year that I just wish people would have seen and that I loved and maybe aren't getting as much attention. Overrated is usually a bit harder for me, and I feel like I struggled with this last year as well. That being said, starting with overrated, my first I'll also give the disclaimer. I did create this list prior to the Oscar nominations coming out. So
Sure.
this one in particular, I thought was going to get a lot more attention than it did, and it is Nope. We reviewed Nope in season 3, episode 20. This was released back in July, and of course, is directed by Jordan Peele and starring Daniel Kaluuya and Kiki Palmer. And to be fair, as I mentioned when we reviewed this movie, I had a terrible viewing experience, and I have not revisited it since. So I will just say that that could be part of it, but I just have not been able to really latch on to this one. And I think, especially compared to Jordan Peele's other films, I just didn't feel that this one matched up to the caliber of his first 2 endeavors. So there were certainly some really great things about this that I did enjoy. But overall, at the end of it, I left feeling disappointed. And maybe that was too high of expectations. Maybe that really was just my experience watching it. But I just wanted more from it. And we talked about this when we reviewed it, but the portion of the movie that focuses on the Gordy storyline, I really loved that. I wish that he would have leaned into that more. Had he gone more that direction with the movie as a whole, I may have enjoyed it a bit more. So that's my first one. Overrated. Nope. Where can you watch it now? You can find it on Peacock TV or, of course, anywhere you can rent movies. Um, that's my first one.
All right. My first pick for an overrated film from 2022 is Bodies, Bodies, Bodies. And that
Ooh.
probably should come to no surprise of anyone who actually heard my review of the film back in season 3, episode 22. But I just think this movie is a tonal mess. I know some people had a really fun time with it. I personally didn't. I didn't find it particularly funny. I found the comedy pretty lazy. It felt all over the place and not in a way that felt satisfying or earned. It tried so hard to be cool. And maybe this is just like my inner old man showing, but this is the second year in a row where like an A24 Gen Z style movie has made it onto my overrated list. Both
Yeah.
Zola last year
Zola. Yeah.
and Bodies, Bodies, Bodies this year. I just don't get the hype. It feels so much like A24 very cringily trying to be like, hey, look at us. We're one of the cool kids. And it's
Yeah.
like, no, no, you're not.
Hmm.
This just, it didn't land for me. And on top of all those things that are more of personal preferences, I can truly say objectively,
Mm-hmm.
in my subjective opinion,
Mm-hmm.
it has atrocious writing throughout the film. Some
Hmm.
of the worst writing I've seen in a horror film or any major studio film in a long time. So much so that I laughed harder at ridiculous writing showcased throughout the film than I did at any of the jokes that it tried to present. I was in the theater with people, friends of mine, who absolutely loved it. I'm so glad they did. I did not. It's so overrated. You can listen to my full review of it again, season 3, episode 22, or you can rent it for $5.99 or buy it for $19.99 on Amazon or iTunes or wherever you'd like.
Yeah. We just did a live over on our Instagram before we recorded this and just chatted through some of our reactions to Oscar nominations for this year. If you joined us, thank you so much for joining us. If you didn't, I'm so sorry you're never going to see it
It
because
did get deleted.
it did get deleted. But one of the things that is kind of cool and exciting about the Oscar nominations this year is that A24 is the highest number of nominations for a
Hmm.
production company this year, right?
I believe so. Yeah, it
Yeah.
ousted Netflix for the first time in a couple years.
You know that we're big A24 fans here if you have listened to this podcast. So, although Bodies 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 was not a win for you, there were some other great offerings from them this year. My second overrated film of this year is Don't Worry, Darling. And this was released back in September, of course, directed by Olivia Wilde and starring Florence Pugh and Harry Styles and Chris Pine. The trailer for this movie was nuts. I loved it. I was immediately excited about it due to just the absolutely stellar cast. And then, of course, Olivia Wilde's follow up to Booksmart, which I absolutely loved. So I was just really excited about the potential of what this movie could have been. And then, of course, all of the drama that we have talked about and covered leading up to the release of this film, I think stirred up a lot of interest and a lot of talk. And unfortunately, I think it overpromised and underdelivered. Of course, it was visually stunning and great production design in many, many ways. Florence Pugh was fantastic, but the rest just completely fell flat and just really missed the mark in most areas. So, highly anticipated, at least for myself, and very underwhelmed, which is always a disappointment. But if you haven't yet watched it, you can watch it on HBO Max, and you can listen to our full review of it on episode 24 of season 3.
Yeah, Don't Worry, Darling was one of the few films that I had as a potential overrated for the year. However, I did ultimately feel like it got enough pushback at its
Yeah.
release that
Yeah.
enough people are kind of aware that it was a flop.
A flop. Yeah.
For my second overrated pick, I'm going to ruffle some feathers, some particular feathers that I don't mind ruffling too much.
Mm.
But it's a hard pick because it is a movie that I do appreciate a lot. and I
Mhm.
would not even say that I don't enjoy. However, I do think that it rose to a status that might be undeserving. I'm going to go with another A24 film,
Oh.
another horror film, a
Oh.
film that we really did like and
Uh-huh.
still do, but is a bit overrated, Pearl.
Ooh.
Pearl officially has become the highest rated horror film on Letterboxd of last year,
Wow.
a year that was particularly strong for horror
Yeah,
films.
strong year.
And don't get me wrong, I do like Pearl. I love so much the fact that it exists, the fact that this Ty West X trilogy exists.
Mhm.
I think eclipses actually how good the movie is. The 50s Technicolor dreamscape of Pearl is excellent. I love the technical aspects of the film,
Mhm.
but it feels like more of an exercise in tribute to an era rather than actual content there outside of Mia Goth's performance.
Yeah.
She is undeniably brilliant, but the film often feels like we're just kind of waiting for the peaks of her performance and the valleys of her performance so that we can kind of move the story along. There's not a lot else in the story going on that's particularly strong. I didn't find the storyline with her family strong. Even the storyline of her wanting to find fame just felt like an exercise to get her performance out there
Hmm.
in intense and emotional and very showy ways. I think like the monologue at the end of the film kind of showcases the feeling of the film as a whole to me. It is really good. She's really good. She is amazing to watch. But by minute 5 of the monologue, you're kind of like, "All right, let's move on."
Yeah.
And that's how I feel about the film. I loved
Mhm.
watching it. I love her performance, but there wasn't anything else that I really loved that much outside of a few technical aspects. It feels overall more like a sketch than an actual film. So while I appreciate its existence, I'm excited to see where that trilogy goes. I do feel like it was slightly overrated and certainly wasn't the best horror film of the year to me, or anything like that. If you want to listen to our whole review on it, you can find that it's episode 23 of last season. Also, if you want to watch it, you can rent or buy it, again for the same price, $6 to rent, $20 to buy on iTunes.
Great. Well, as Wyatt mentioned, we decide 5 movies up front, two of each, and then one wild card.
Mhm.
And both last year and this year, we both went for 3 underrated. So
Look at us.
look at
Such
us go.
optimists.
So optimistic, so consistent. So, 2 of my underrated films, we actually didn't officially cover. We talked about covering both of them, and they were just ones that we never got around to. Again, just because sometimes either they're hard to see or they just don't match up well with the other stuff that we are reviewing or that's coming out. So, I am excited to talk about a couple of them. My first underrated film that just has such a sweet spot in my heart is Cha Cha Real Smooth. This was released back in June,
Mhm.
directed by Cooper Raiff and starring Cooper Raiff and Dakota Johnson. This is one of the few films that I have watched more than once. I feel like there's just so much that we see that I will choose to see new things over revisiting things.
Sure.
But this one just, I don't know, really hit my heart in a special way and is also one that will make me cry. So if I know that I need a cry, I can go to this one. But this is an Apple original film and it is just emotional, it is heartfelt. It's a coming of age story about a post-college grad named Andrew, who is played by writer director Cooper Raiff. He moves home after college and is just attempting to figure out what he's doing with his life. And as he is doing so, he gets a job as a bat mitzvah DJ hype man. And in doing so, meets a mom named Domino, who really just helps him navigate this season of his life. And I think the two of them just build this really beautiful relationship, beautiful and complicated relationship. It's just like a beautiful story of needing each other and doing life with each other and just helping each other
Mhm.
figure things out. So I am so excited to see what Cooper Raiff does from here. He announced the launch of his own production company this past year. He has some big projects coming up. So I just feel if this is a preview of what is to come for him, I'm just thrilled and really looking forward to what he has next. So this is available to watch on Apple TV Plus. So if you have that, check it out. You won't be disappointed, I hope.
Yeah, Cha Cha, fantastic movie. One that we just never were able to kind of accumulate enough time, or it just didn't work out in the schedule to
Mhm.
get a review out of. But I know we both really appreciated it. And I am also very excited to see where Cooper Raif's career goes. My first pick for an underrated film of 2022 might once again be a little bit of a strange pick, but it is my list, so I can do what I want. It is going to be Ambulance
Oh my
or
gosh.
Ambulance. I know I have talked so much crap about Michael Bay throughout my life. It's hard to accept that these words are coming out of my mouth. Ambulance is genuinely a good movie. It is a fun time. It's incredibly stupid and is very good. I found myself in retrospect not laughing at the movie, but laughing along with the movie.
Mhm.
I really liked it. It feels like Bay coming to terms with exactly who he is, accepting it and capitalizing on it. All of the parts of Bay's filmography that he genuinely does pretty well are present in this movie, and some of the best versions of those are present in this movie. All of the parts he genuinely does really poorly, he for the most part leaves behind. And all the parts that maybe you like it, maybe you don't, they're not bad or good, they're just Bay, are there in spades. And I kind of dig it. I liked it this time around. Don't get me wrong. Do I like almost any of his other movies? No. I think this is probably his best film. I had a fun time with it, and I don't think it should be lumped into the same conversation or category or level as the rest of his filmography. Do I think this film is amazing? No. Do I think it's one of the best of the year? Probably not. We literally reviewed this film back in season 3, episode 9, alongside Everything Everywhere All at Once, which
Wow.
is 10 million times better of a movie. However, it doesn't suck. And
Yeah.
people kind of talk like it does. And for that
Mm.
reason, I think it's underrated.
Hmm.
If you want to watch it, it is available to stream on Amazon Prime Video.
Wow. It's not bad. It's not good. It's Bay.
Ooh, I love it.
That's what you said. It was a good line.
Oh, I didn't even know I said it.
All right. Well, my second underrated film is Triangle of Sadness. This is
Mm,
another one that we did not cover. And up until tonight, I didn't even know that you have seen this because we haven't talked about it yet. But this was a movie that was released back in September. It was directed by Ruben Ostlund, starring Tobias Thorwood, Harris
mhm.
Dickinson, and the late Charlie Dean. And again, I created this list before the Oscar nominations came out, but I am pleasantly surprised to see this actually was nominated for a couple of Oscars, one of which is for Best Picture, which honestly a bit shocking to me, but I loved it. So I'm gonna support it. But this is a movie that I feel like really snuck up, and I don't feel like a ton of people saw it, at least not a ton of people that I have talked to or who are in my circle, which is just such a shame. So if you have seen it, would love to chat about it. But this is the story of a group of super wealthy individuals who essentially go on a cruise together. And whilst cruising, there is tragedy and chaos that ensues. And it was just such a fun, outrageous, and chaotic movie, and I had a blast with it. There are some really great performances. I thought it was incredibly creative and original story and was really just entertaining from start to finish. And like I said, just was outright insane at times. So I tried to think of how to explain this movie. It was like Bravo's Below Deck meets Titanic meets Lord of the Flies. And if you like any of those things, or
Mhm.
if that sounds interesting to you, make sure to check it out, especially because it is an Oscar nominated film now. So if our plug to you, or if my plug to you is not enough, let that be additional endorsement to check this out. And yeah, like I mentioned, one of the stars is Charlie Dean, and she actually passed away just a couple months ago, which is just so tragic. So yeah, she passed away like shortly after the film was released. So a bit of a tragic story there. But like I said, overall, just a great cast, some great performances, and just a really fun and original story. You can watch this wherever you rent movies. So as far as I know, not streaming on anything, but easily accessible.
Yeah, I think that just because it was nominated for Best Picture or had some Oscar recognition doesn't mean that it can't be underrated. I think those things aren't mutually exclusive. Plenty of movies get nominated for Oscars that, that's why people say, what? That was nominated for an Oscar? I've never even heard of it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
I think it definitely deserves a place on your underrated list. And what deserves a place on my list of underrated movies, which you apparently disagree with, is Jordan Peele's Nope. This is again second year in a row that you have had a movie on your overrated that I have on
Yeah.
my underrated, but it's a movie that has only grown on me since it's come out. I think visually, audio wise, in terms of its scope and ambition and performances, Daniel Kaluuya in this film is amazing. The amount of acting he's able to do with his eyes alone,
Mm-hmm.
and Peele able to capture that better than anyone, makes this film worth it. His relationship and performance along with Kiki Palmer is fantastic. I praise the ambition here. I'm no like Jordan Peele fanboy. I think Get Out is one of the best written films of all time. It's not near my favorite film of all time. I think Us is a dud, to be honest. And when we saw this, I think I kind of categorized it similarly. I think I liked it better than Us initially,
Mm-hmm.
but just felt like it didn't do much for me. And I've kind of fallen in love with it since. I think it's absolutely fantastic. The fact that this movie, which is kind of centered around the idea of performance and being a performer and performative work and who you're performing for and what you're performing for, the fact that at the end of the day it's not getting talked about, it's not getting any recognition, is ironic in exactly
Mm-hmm.
the way the movie would probably want it to be.
Yeah.
It's great. I love it. Go see Nope. Don't listen to Heather. Listen to our review of Nope, season 3, episode 20, or stream it now on Peacock.
Yes, love that. Well, for my third underrated film, this was an impossible decision. So even though I agree with this, there are a number of other films that I also would give a nod to. But the one that I'm going to claim is Watcher. This was a film that was released back in June, directed by Chloe Okuno and starring Micah Monroe, Carl Glusman, and Bern Gorman. This was one of my favorite horror movies of this past year. Again, didn't feel like a ton of people saw it or were talking about it, which again felt like a tragedy. It had excellent visuals, it had great suspense, an incredible performance from Micah Monroe. And as I mentioned when we reviewed it, it isn't anything like profoundly groundbreaking,
Mhm.
but I feel like it was executed really well and was certainly one that stuck with me for a while after watching it, which I feel like is a sign of a great horror film. So it is available to watch wherever you rent movies. It is suspenseful, it is dark, it is icky at times, but it was really wonderful. So you can listen to our review of Watcher on season 3, episode 18, and go check it out.
Yeah, it's great. It's a movie that I came very close to putting on my underrated list myself. So
Yeah.
there were actually quite a few horror films from the year that could have made it onto my underrated list. A lot of them did get some talk, even on the smaller circles. Watcher, even in smaller circles of film communities, I still feel like didn't get the talk it deserves. So that's a
Mhm.
great pick. For my final pick, my final underrated film, I'm going to go to a film that I would attribute to possibly my favorite theater experience of the year.
Ooh.
And that's in a year where I saw Top Gun Maverick like 6 times. So
Oh.
truly love this film, and no one, I mean no one, is talking about it in the way that it deserves. It's Vengeance.
Hmm.
Now, Vengeance, being BJ Novak's feature directorial debut, gave me literally everything I want out of a movie. Like, it
Hmm.
has something for everyone. And I said that when we first reviewed it. Now, maybe it doesn't have something for everyone, but it has something for every single version of me. And every single version of me that could have showed up to watch that movie got
Hmm.
satisfied. It couldn't matter how I approached the movie. If I was having a good day, bad day, if it was raining outside, sunny outside, if I was wearing shorts and sandals or boots and pants, like it wouldn't have mattered. The movie would have delivered for me. I think it's fantastic. It's so well written. It's hilarious. It really just has everything I want out of a movie. It genuinely was one of the few films this year that I felt a level of not having any idea at the direction at points, where it was going, feeling like I was completely at the mercy of this writer and him weaving his story. Not that it's overly complicated or anything like that, but I was just completely on board with the brand of the film and what it was going for. It hit every marker for me. I absolutely loved it. I wish more people saw it, clearly, which is why I'm putting it on the list right now. And you can listen to my review of it, season 3, episode 21, or please do go watch it right now, again on Amazon Prime Video. You can log on and stream it as we speak.
Wow. Big Amazon Prime guy this year, huh?
I guess so.
I guess so.
All right, everyone. Well, those were our overrated and our underrated films of 2022. Thank you so much for joining again. I think this is one of the more fun concepts we do as a show. I'd love to
It's a
integrate
blast.
this type of conversation into more parts of the year, because I don't want to have to wait until January 2024 to be talking about this year. Already excited for more. Thank you for listening. Let us know what films you thought were overrated or underrated from this year. We'd love to hear from you. Until then, watch as many movies as you can, and we'll talk to you soon. Bye.
Bye.
My house is far away.
Mhm.
My grandma calls me and she says, "Hey, I'm going to go to dinner at your parents. Will you take me there?" And being the nice grandson that I am, I say, "Sure," even though it means me driving all the way across town just to pick her up, just to go over to my parents, just to wait for her to eat and play games and then bring her back. And at that point, I was like, okay, I'll just join for dinner and games too. But still. So I do all that. And that really has nothing to do with the main part of the story, just showing that she's ungrateful.